So I guess I broke the 7 episode curse, or is it the 10th? Welcome back to the Creator's Log. My name is Carlos. Today we're going to be celebrating my 10th episode threshold and what I've learned so far. So, if you're new to the podcast, this is probably going to summarize everything we've talked about in the past episodes. I still suggest you go take a listen to some of my mistakes and learnings throughout the crazy podcasting journey I decided to put myself through. Not regretting it, actually. And I'm going to be talking about some of those points here in this episode. Also, in this episode, I want to let you guys know that for the upcoming weeks, there's a chance you'll be seeing less of this podcast on your feed, not because we've learned everything that we need to learn as podcasters. No, we have a lot to learn. But I will be taking a small hiatus from the podcast, from at least creating episodes, because, like I mentioned before, I'm grateful that a lot of new podcasters have discovered this little ranting podcast. And I really do appreciate the support that you guys have shown to this podcast. And because of that, I want to try to take some time to promote the podcast. Because if I'm recording episodes for this podcast, I've recorded more episodes for this podcast than the physical cut. So I want to be able to focus on promoting and marketing this podcast a little bit more, maybe try to reach other podcasters like ourselves who are, still out there looking for a community. So my whole goal on all the podcasts that I've created is to create a community, and the podcast community has given me a lot. And I do apologize if I keep going out of breath or my voice keeps crackling. It's been a hectic week at work, and summer for me is very hectic at my regular bill paying job. So I speak a lot at work, and yeah, just this week alone, my voice has been breaking up. But that doesn't deter me from talking to you guys. I'm going to be focusing a little bit on promoting the podcast, try to reach new audiences. I will be taking some time to create a few more episodes for the physical cut. I am very backed up on that content. If you guys want to listen to it, I welcome you to do so. It's not just about physical media, it's also about films. We also talk about small businesses. I'm going to be creating another episode on small businesses because, as I mentioned before, if you're a regular listener to the podcast, I lost the recording of my guest. So I'm going to have that guest back on. We're going to be talking about a total different topic, but we're still going to maybe touch a little bit on his small business because it was the whole point of bringing him in, and on a collaborator that he knows. We're going to talk a little bit about that person as well. And I'm also trying to create a tribute for one of my favorite horror movies. So I'm right now talking to a few collectors that I want to get together. I want to have them send me voicemails, so I can use those to create an like a tribute podcast for that movie. So it's a lot of work that I have to do for that podcast. And every time inspiration strikes, I usually just run to this one to talk to you because I feel more comfortable. I guess there's no, I wouldn't say need for perfection in this podcast. There is, because at the end of the day, I want to deliver you guys a well done episode. So I don't want to be putting stuff out there. Again, I'm learning as well as you are. So the more I grow, the more I want to make sure that what I'm putting out there is well recorded, is well edited, at least for my skill level. If you want to go ahead and check out that other podcast, I'm going to link it below. That is the physical cut. You can find it anywhere you listen to your podcast. And I know people hate when you say that, but literally I'm almost everywhere. That's a lesson. That's probably one of the lessons that I learned, is to be everywhere. So when you visit my webpage, you will see the listen link and it's going to take you to your preferred platform. So I can see in the rss.com website, I can see the apps, the directories, and the browsers that are used for listening to the podcast. And right now, there was a podcast platform that was showing up on that graphic. And I can't find it now, but I think it was either Podchaser or it was one of those. But now, today, that I refresh it, I do see that 10% of my listens come from Alexa enabled devices. And I also have Firefox and Chrome, but I see that Spotify is the least of my listens. It doesn't mean that I don't promote my Spotify to the users. It's there, at least for right now, because it changes every 24 hours. 55% is coming from Apple Podcast. So for a few days, I was getting a lot of listens on Podcast Addict and Podchasers, I believe is called. One of the lessons, and this is not on my list of lessons, but it was something that I really wanted to share with you guys because we can't really just focus on one platform. It was that make sure that your host gives you the option to put your podcast everywhere. Like I said, one of my episodes gets a lot of listens on YouTube. Another thing about RSS.com that I forgot to mention was that those listens don't transfer over to your statistics on RSS.com. So if I add those little bit of listens that I have on YouTube, that episode has had over 100 downloads, which is a good thing because again, I don't really market this podcast, which is why I'm taking the small time now during the summer to promote it, reach a new audience, reach newer listeners. So that's my focus right now. But if I do come into something that I want to talk to you guys about, just make sure that you have added me to your playlist so that way you can just get my episode as soon as I drop it. So I will keep you guys updated throughout the summer. And I have a few things that I want to talk to you guys about. So I will probably just, whenever I have some time, I will try to record those episodes and get them to you guys as soon as possible. But let's just get into today's business. What have I learned so far when it comes to podcasting? Well, a lot and not much at the same time. So, what I'm going to focus is on some of the biggest mistakes and some of the biggest lessons that stood out so far. Some mistakes I'm still making, and I will keep making until I get better at it. And that is probably using Canva, not trusting Riverside, and promoting my episodes. So obviously, promoting a podcast is pretty difficult, but it's doable. I'm learning, and once I get that down, I will let you guys know how it's been working for me. When I launched the podcast, obviously I didn't launch it thinking I knew everything and that I had all the answers. But 10 episodes later, like I realized that podcasting is mostly learning as you go. There's a lot of lessons to be learned and you learn something different every day. The more you listen to podcasters on podcasting, you feel less creative or less motivated, and that still does affect me a little bit. I noticed that, and that is something I have to learn, that my podcast is not their podcast and their podcast doesn't reflect my podcast and it doesn't reflect my audience. My audience, not just you guys, but my audience in the physical cut are completely different, and I don't speak to you the same way that I speak to them. And some of these podcasters, at least like gurus, not necessarily podcasters, just some of these gurus, they want you to apply what they teach you as a blanket to all your podcasts. And that is not how you should take those advice. I keep repeating, you apply things to certain podcasts. You don't apply it to every podcast because the same way that I record this podcast, which is outline, is not the same way you probably want to record your podcast, which might be scripted or it might be improvised, which I don't suggest, but to each their own. But the first lesson would be that you don't need to have everything figured out before you start. Don't obsess with hosting platforms. You can start for free. I gave you guys some free options as to how to start for free and which hosts offer entirely free, no strings attached podcasting, and that's rss.com. You can try that out, and once you're ready to take the next step in podcasting and invest a little, I also told you guys what to do next. That's on the last episode of choosing a podcast host for rss.com. So that's one of the lessons that I wish I would have learned sooner, because I wasted a lot of time on searching for a podcast host. And between you and me, I don't know if I want to move back to Captivate. I've been thinking about it, but it's because of my physical cut podcast. I do need a little bit more marketing. I am talking to some people that are business like. I wouldn't say they're business professionals, black ties and stuff, but they're very professional at what they do. They have a huge audience. And even though we talk a lot, they like my post, I like their post, but I still want to seem a little bit more professional when approaching them for collaboration, or some of these small businesses for perhaps promoting them. Maybe I won't ask them for money, but maybe I want them to say, hey, we let this guy talk about us, even though I can do that, but I want them to know that I'm talking about them so they can promote my podcast to those collectors that go to them to buy. That's where I want to be. So I want to seem a little bit more professional in my approach. So I already tried Captivate for free for about 3 months, but I don't know if I wanna go back. I'm so afraid of transferring my podcast, of losing things. I know you won't. I know you're not gonna lose your listeners or your episodes, but it's the fear of the unknown. So that is why I'm also taking a small break of this one so I can focus on the other one. And when I transfer everything, I can keep a very close eye that I don't lose any of my content. I'm terrified about that. And we also talked about comparing recording softwares, and that was probably the biggest lesson and the biggest mistake I'm still making. Right now, I'm recording on Riverside. I'm kind of scared of how this is going to turn out, because from here, I am taking it over to Adobe to edit, because I still don't understand how to edit on Riverside. And actually, my Riverside subscription is up today. So after this, I don't think I'll be recording on Riverside anymore. But I just wanted to give it a last try before I pull the plug on that. So we'll see how this recording turns out. Hopefully good, because I've been talking for a while now. But when it came to recording softwares, I did learn not to trust them entirely. Always have a backup. Always have a backup of everything. One of the episodes I downloaded from Descript on Wave form, and I was editing in Adobe. And when I was editing in Adobe, Adobe was sounding kind of weird. So thankfully, I was able to restart the editing in Adobe, and with the original waveform that I had downloaded as a backup originally. So just don't download, upload elsewhere, and delete the original. Keep the original until your podcast episode is entirely done. And make sure you keep the backup of that episode as well. So the recording softwares is something we will probably be spending a lot of time on. And that's because we want to find a recording software that works with our workflow. Our workflow is another thing. The way you create your workflow is going to be what gets you through the 10th episode, the 20th episode, because if you have a good workflow that is working for you, mine is I do my outline, I record, I edit, I work on that episode until that episode is live. And then I take a little break and then I go into promoting and marketing the episode. So that is the workflow that works for me. For you, you might batch record, you might batch edit, and you might batch promote. But I feel like that might be a lot of promoting and you might overwhelm people with too much content. So unless you have it spread out throughout the month, you're working on one episode this week and another one next week, then I guess that's a little bit easier than just throwing all those episodes out there at the same time, which I'm assuming that's not what you're doing, but I could be wrong. Also, research can become procrastination. We did talk about procrastinating when you're starting. You want to be perfect and you want to have the perfect episode come out. And that's part of procrastination. And that is going to stop you from creating altogether. So your research should be probably not, I wouldn't say the easiest thing. If you're creating a podcast, you should probably have some basic knowledge of what you're talking about. So your research should be easier than if you're not a scientist and now you want to talk about chromosomes, then yeah, your research is going to be a lot of work because you have to start with the basics of biology. So if you're a filmmaker and your podcast is about filmmaking, your research should be easier because you already know where to look for that information. So, research, don't let it be an excuse for creating because that's just procrastinating. And a lot of the lessons that you learn after you publish your episode. It's not even during the recording, it's not during the research process, it's not finding your host or your recording software. It's once you publish your episode, that's when you start noticing, oh, I could have done this better. Oh, I thought that was going to come out bad, but it actually sounds good. Oh, I like the theme music here, but maybe I can move it a little bit more over there. Like I said, I like my theme music to outro as I start speaking. So I kind of like it a little bit undertoned of my voice. I don't like it when it's too loud that I can't hear the podcaster. I actually stopped listening to a podcast because of that, because the music was so loud, I couldn't hear anything he was saying. And I like the guy. He's funny, but a lot of the jokes got, you know, hidden under loud rock music, and I didn't know what he was talking about. So I just stopped listening entirely. One thing that you'll notice is that community is very important. It matters more than downloads. The community you build is what's going to get you through a lot of milestones. And I'm not just talking about the 10 and the 20th episode. Numbers you can obsess over. I check my numbers sometimes a few times a day just to make sure that I'm not getting targeted by bots. So I'm not obsessed over the numbers. Sometimes I'm surprised of the numbers. But what I do is that if I post, for example, a link on Facebook or LinkedIn, a few hours later, I check again just to make sure that the bots, because it tells me, how many bots or how many possible bots downloaded the episode. Thankfully, the last 24 to 48 hours, I haven't gotten any. It has been fully legit listeners, even though those bots are not counted in the listeners. They take those out. What applies as a bot? I don't know. That's down to rss.com. But they don't count those numbers. They don't include them in my downloads. So I see actual downloads and then down I see the percentage that could have been bots. So that's the only reason I track my podcast a few times a day. And it's because if I post it on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, I want to keep an eye out, make sure that I'm not getting too many bots from there. Because if I see that, then I'm just not going to promote my podcast on that platform. So that's, I know it doesn't have a lot to do with community, but it's just don't obsess too much over the numbers. Try to create more connections because if you collab because you're making connections, you're probably going to have more genuine listeners. You're gonna find listeners from all over the place. You might try to collab with somebody from Sweden, which I gotta find out who that person is because they're not a bot. They're not a bot because every week I get that listener from Sweden, and maybe they'll contact me, and maybe we'll make chocolate. I don't know, but point is that you don't know who's listening, and you don't know who's out there willing to help. You guys have heard me mention Dave from How to Podcast, and he was talking about. I'm actually going to link that episode here at the bottom with his permission, which I hope he's okay with. And he's talking about community. And yesterday, when I was on my way to work, which is when I listen to Dave, I listen to Dave all the time, even when I'm at home cleaning. But he was talking about community. He was doing a share session, a mic share sessions, I believe he calls it. And he was talking about community. He was talking about how the community came together to help him and gifted him certain things because they like what he puts out there. And listen to the episode. It's a great episode about community, and that is something that, like I said, I learned. I learned a lot from the community that I have found, that I have built. I love the questions that I get because I don't know the answers. You ask me questions that I don't know the answer to, or I didn't know the answer to. And I went out there, I created an episode, and I gave you the answer because I learned. And you were probably afraid of going through that experience. I'm not. I'm not. So I went out there, I had the experience for you, and I told you about how it went for me. Hopefully, it goes the same or better, but don't be afraid of going out there and building a community. And the messages, the comments, the conversations, they stick with you way longer than a download because the downloads they refresh every 24 hours. And podcasting does feel less lonely when you are part of a community. And I spoke about how I felt at the beginning, which is why I started this podcast because I said to myself, there has to be other alone. We're alone. We're not lonely. Or is it backwards? I don't know. But I wanted to reach other podcasters that felt they were in this alone and let them know no, even though we're just listening to each other, we are not alone. And that is something you have to take in consideration when you're procrastinating. So don't, if you're procrastinating, say to yourself, I'm not alone in this. I will make mistakes and I will learn from them. Because if you're just obsessing over creating the perfect episode and because you feel alone, you're not going to get past episode one. And that's just your intro or your trailer. I don't want to talk more about recording softwares because I feel like a lot of my time that of this podcast has been my bad experiences with recording softwares. I've gone back over and over YouTube videos and everybody's just praising these platforms and how good they are, how perfect they are, how they make guacamole and for you great, but it doesn't do it for me. They're not making me the perfect guacamole. Fun fact, I hate guacamole. It's fine if you're a listener and you eat guacamole. We're not all perfect. But you can make guacamole. I'm still not going to eat it, but I want you to help me edit. I want you to help me enhance my voice. And if you're failing at those basic needs, you're not helping my needs as a podcaster. Therefore, I don't have a need for you, which again, this is why probably 99% most likely, this would be my last recording on Riverside. We'll see after today. I logged in to Riverside and there's a lot of pop-ups in this recording software. I just want to record. I don't want you to give me how is your recording going thumbs up. review in the middle of a recording or when I'm trying to export my recording. Can we just leave that for later? Right now, I need to focus on my recording. I don't need to review you while my podcast is being exported to Riverside because it's not being exported to my computer. No, it's being exported to Riverside. So then I would have to go out from the studio to my projects to then edit. I'm already exhausted thinking about it. And then on top of that, you're giving me, hey, can you leave us a review? How is your recording going? Well, not well. So I already talked about that before, so I'm not going to rant on that again. But they have some new features coming soon, and they have some new features that just came out. Do you want to learn about them? No, because I'm pretty sure they're not useful for me. They're not going to help me edit the ums or the ahs or the oohs. They're not going to help me shorten my silence time because I tried and it sounds like a bad edit. It's a bad edit. You're giving me a bad edit when I edit out my ums and ahs and oohs and I know and like and meh. It gives me a bad edit. You're not even editing properly. You're doing all these choppy edits. At least the script has been better at that. It doesn't give me a horrible cut between words. So that's probably why I'll probably continue using this script for now. I don't even want to know what new features you have as a recording software if you cannot do the simple things that I need. And that's my final thoughts on recording softwares because a lot of them have been big letdowns, including Adobe that I praised for a while. So obviously, they're not going to give us everything. A lot of them try to jump through hoops and be a lot of things at once. And that just creates an even worse experience for a lot of us. If you're a video podcaster and, Riverside is your messiah, I do apologize. But for me as a basic audio podcaster, it has not worked properly. So that's that on recording softwares. Also, when I said don't obsess with podcast hosting platforms, which one is the best host, procrastinating doing so. There's no perfect host because, like I've said before, I like Captivate, I like Buzzsprout, but I host with RSS.com because I have three podcasts. Well, two that are more active, but I have three podcasts, which means that in Buzzsprout, I would have to be at a very expensive plan to be able to host two podcasts. On Captivate, well, I went through my experience with Captivate. It was a little bit complicated at first. One of the add ons that I used made no sense that I had to pay extra for it while I was basically in a free trial. It was part of my plan. And it made no sense to me that why now I have to pay for that. So when I did the math, I basically was paying the same amount that I was paying for RSS.com. And RSS.com is less complicated, it's more straightforward, and I know where everything is. When it came to the website for the podcast, I was able to find it faster than I was in Captivate. And in Captivate, I was editing that website page that belongs to the podcast for hours, and I still didn't know what it looked like because I didn't know where to go to find it. So that was something very simple to do on RSS.com. At least, like if I want to share not just one episode, but the entire podcast, I just go share the website for that podcast, even though I have my own website for my entire network. But if I want to share that one specifically, then I would just go to rss.com, click on the link, and then just send it to somebody and they can choose where to listen. And they can also choose to listen to anywhere they want when I send them the link for that single episode. So that's something that I've learned with rss.com. That's like 10 points for that. Does it work the same way in Captivate? I don't know. That's why, as I said before, I want to perhaps move to Captivate again because there's some marketing needs that I have that RSS.com doesn't give me. But Do I have to struggle again to learn how to find that podcast website? Do I have to learn again how to redirect my podcasts to my actual .com, which was very difficult, by the way. I followed all the instructions and it still didn't direct people to my website. So with RSS.com, that was so much simpler that now I'm so afraid of going to Captivate and starting all over again. So there's no perfect host, and that shouldn't be stopping you from podcasting. Just go with what's free, try it out, and while you get your sea legs, and just start from there. That's the best advice anyone is going to give you. Don't obsess over the podcast host. Just get yourself the recording software that you need. Learn how to edit, learn how to record yourself, get used to hearing your voice, get used to doing all this recording process done and editing and publishing. And once you get that workflow, then you can obsess over a new host or a new recording software. Try them out. Try all of it out because if it's free trial, try it all out. Create an account, go through their website, see what works for you and what does not. There's some things that are blocked if you're free, but you still got to try it. I tried a lot of podcast hosts and I spoke about them. I spoke which ones worked for me and which ones didn't work for me. And you'll probably realize that most of them do the exact same basic job. We obsess over them over and over. We compare everything. And then at the end of the day, they just do the same basic job. Publishing consistently matters more than endlessly switching platforms. That's why I want to focus and take some time on my physical cut podcast because if I want to try to do a switch eventually to another host, I want to make sure that I have enough content that when I transfer, my listeners are still there. I have something to put out for my listeners. And while I'm taking that big risk and I'm terrified of all these changes and what's going to work and what's not, it doesn't affect my content. It doesn't affect me from creating content because I already have some content created that I can put out there while I stress out over the move to a new hosting platform. And we got to keep in mind that podcasting is more work than just recording. And that's a lesson you will learn as soon as you hit publish. Recording is always going to be the easy part. Just get yourself a good mic. I gave an option about a great portable mic, which is the DJI-2 mic. It's a great mic. Once you learn how to use it, it's going to be your best friend, especially if you travel, if you want to take your mic to work and when you're in your break room and your ideas come to you, it's a great mic to walk around with. I'll link it below as well. It's just an Amazon link I'm just going to put there for you. So you can go ahead and check out that DJI-2 mic. I use the Shure MV7 Plus. It's a beautiful mic. It doesn't make me sound like Brad Pitt, but I will eventually get there. But I'll link that one as well so you guys can check it out. If you had a chance to listen to the lost episode that I did for the physical cut, that one was recorded with the DJI mic. So if you listen to that and you like how it sounds, then I would suggest the DJI to mic. It's very small, but it's very powerful. Also, you will be very obsessed with your titles. I spoke on titles. Don't marry them. Have a title for your regular podcast episode on podcasting platforms and have one that is SEO friendly for YouTube. Obviously, make sure your titles are not an inside joke, you know? Sometimes I do want to make titles sound stupid or silly, but then I think about it and I'm like, better not, because people are not going to get it. You can use your transcript and upload it to ChatGPT. It will give you some titles, but remember that is only part of the job. Make sure you read the title. Don't just copy paste it. Read the title. Make sure that it makes sense. Make sure that you edit it to what it should be, not what it gave you. Because again, you can't trust AI with everything. I always focus on transcript when I talk to you guys. And that is because you have to learn that your show notes is also very important. Right now, with all this SEOs, you want to have a good show note that is SEO friendly in case your podcast shows up in Google searches, because that's how it's going to pop up. Right now, I believe it was like 10% of my downloads are from Chrome, which is why I go and I make sure that those are not bots. So that's why I always, like I said before, I look at my numbers because I want to make sure that the listeners that are finding me through Chrome are not bots, are probably just people who search how to start a podcast or what's the best recording software, what's the best microphone to start with, and in my show notes, there's that. Those topics are there. So if those people, that 10% that found me through Chrome and Safari, then they found me through there because of my show notes, because of my transcript. Your transcript should also be in your episodes. Use the same transcript. The good thing about RSS.com, they do an automatic transcript for you, but Descript and Adobe, they give you a transcript as well. So download that transcript, and that's where you're going to do all the things that I mentioned last time, blogs, social media posts, all of those good things. You're going to use that for all the work that you have to do. A lot of it is going to be rooted from your transcript. Thumbnails. That's something you have to learn as well. I'm slowly learning how to Canva. Some people were criticizing me because I was using AI for my thumbnails. AI is everywhere. If you use Riverside, that's 99% AI. The only thing that is not AI in Riverside is your voice and your face. So I guess 98% of it is AI. Though 2% is your voice and your face if you're doing video. So when they came at me because I used an AI thumbnail, first of all, I was taken aback because this was for the Physical Cut podcast. And the Physical Cut podcast is for physical collectors, which I get why AI would be a problem. But I looked into that person's page, and 90% of the stuff they posted was AI. And it didn't make sense to me why a thumbnail that, even though it was AI, I had first created in Canva very poorly. I just said to AI, take this and recreate it a little bit, but keep what I made. That was it. 50% of the work was me. The other 50% of the work was AI. I'm just not good at that. So now that I'm learning, to make thumbnails, I'm using my own, at least for the Physical Cut, I'm using my own movies as backgrounds. I'm using my face in some, not all of them, but in some of them. So there's things that are tactile that I'm using for my thumbnails. I still use Canva. And if I need to edit something out, I try to do it on ChatGPT, but it just messes it up. But we'll talk about that when we talk about AI. Social media, you're going to spend a lot of time on social media. Just because you're on social media, you got 10,000 followers, it doesn't mean that 10,000 listeners are going to be reflecting on your podcast. It is not. I have a lot of people sharing my podcast episodes. When I check my stats, I got one listen in the last 24 hours, which means 24 people share my episode thumbnail on Instagram, but only one decided to listen. So that's where promoting and converting, you got to check those numbers out. They don't always add up. You will notice that when you start doing your promotions, you'll notice that not all the numbers of people who hit like and share are going to be reflected on your listeners. Maybe they do listen over there on YouTube, so keep an eye out on that as well. Put it out on YouTube. Even if nobody listens to it, put it out on YouTube, create a podcast playlist, and just put it out there. You never know who's going to discover it on YouTube. I've had a few listens, maybe two or three on one episode. Maybe that person said, you know what? I don't want to listen to it on YouTube because every time I close the app, it stops playing. So they come over here to my podcast on Apple or Spotify or Podchasers. I don't know, is Podchaser a thing or am I making it up? I don't know. I could have sworn I read Podchasers. Regardless, you don't know where they're going to end up listening to you at. So you want to be everywhere, including YouTube. If you get more listens on YouTube than on other podcast platforms, maybe you want to try to spend more time over there, make some videos. You don't like me. I don't do long videos. I just do shorts with my movies and stuff. So maybe you want to do that. Go where your audience is. And then slowly start, hey, let's go over there. Let's go to a private room over here at Apple Podcasts. You know what I mean? Uh, made it sound like a stripper bar, but that is how it works. You want to grab them from where they at and be like, "Hey, you want to come over here with me alone and talk to me for a minute or 30?" You know, it's completely free. Unlike a stripper bar in Vegas, you'll come out broke. Blog posts, blog posts, blog posts, blog posts. Yes, it's an audio podcast. Yes, you want people to listen to it, but create a Substack. I know some people hate on Substack right now because they got this guy who did illegal things, and he's probably one of the biggest paid Substacker, if that's a word, Substacky. But some people criticize it because of that. I don't follow the guy because I don't follow people like that. But it is a good place to also build community. And Substack is very hard to grow. It is very hard to grow. Trust me. But once you get a few people following you, those are real people. Those are people who are actually interested and subscribe to you. Don't spam them with your podcast. Start slow, create that blog post, put it out there, and then share it again with a link to your podcast. Be like, hey, if you read my blog post, here's the actual episode that is based on. That's what I do. Also, I got another criticism because I said that I used my transfer and I uploaded to ChatGPT, and that's how I do my blog post. That doesn't mean ChatGPT wrote my blog. If you know how to prompt ChatGPT, it takes a long time because ChatGPT kind of adapts to you as you go. All AI does. And I was going to speak about this later on, but since we're talking about blog posts, I'll mention it now. I am very precise when I tell ChatGPT, use my words. Don't edit anything in, only edit out what is repetitive. Because sometimes we're talking and we repeat ourselves a lot. And even though we edit our podcasts, it might still be so far in the beginning, you don't even remember. I don't know if I talked about pina coladas at the beginning. I do remember talking about guacamole, but maybe I want to talk about pina coladas again. I don't remember. But what I do tell it is very specific commands. Keep my words. If I'm speaking with a guest, that's a little bit more difficult because then I have to go into my transcript and edit my transcript myself, make sure that there's two speakers there, or I created more of a story. So the only way that I use ChatGPT to create my blog post if it's a solo episode. If it's with a guest, I try to create a more of a story, which in that case, I gotta edit all that myself. So people criticize it, but I guess they didn't listen to the episode entirely. And so, they just saw AI in my thumbnail and they saw AI in my episode title, and they're like, nope, not for me. But if you're searching something on Google, there's a 99% chance every response is AI. You're using AI for everything now. So the hypocrisy of, oh, don't use AI to create. This is my voice. If AI was speaking for me, like I said, I would chosen Brad Pitt. So if you're going to come at someone for using AI for creating a blog post, make sure you read the blog post first and make sure you have read other things from that person to know how that person speaks, to know how that person writes. Because at this point, you don't even know what's AI and what's not. But there's authenticity to podcasting and writing that AI can't replicate. But our next topic is going to be AI. So it's kind of a good segue into it. Keep in mind that AI is a tool and not a replacement. AI is not there to replace you. AI is there to help you enhance your voice. AI is there to help you with your transcripts to create the show notes. Read your show notes. And I just spoke about some backlash that I've gotten from people that haven't even listened to the episode on AI, haven't even listened to any of the episodes that I recorded, but they just decided, oh, it's a thumbnail that looks AI. Nope, not for me. Okay, so that means that you just sit home in your sofa, you don't move, you don't open up your phone, you don't speak to anyone in the internet because, again, almost everything today is AI. You call up to pay your bills, that's an AI operated voice. Try talking to a human, impossible. If you're doing bank transactions, if you're taking out a loan on a website or something, all of that in the back end now is AI. I work for a big company and they send out messages to our customers. And then the customer comes to me and I have to explain to them, sorry, our AI is still learning because they're using AI. But I'm the human that has to face the consequences of AI getting stuff wrong. Being criticized for using AI to enhance the voice, which, by the way, the mic already does the AI work. Riverside does the AI work. You're creating magic clips. Guess who created the magic clip for you? AI. Oh, AI steals other people's stuff. Well, so does Canva, because you didn't create everything from Canva. You just created a post, a thumbnail with stuff other people had already created. Canva is just a dumpster of images where you go and you grab and you copy and you paste and you edit. If you tell Canva, I don't want this, and you highlight it, guess who's going to take that out? Not my mom. It's going to be AI. So, criticizing someone for using AI to help with podcasting is hypocritical. So, make sure you measure how you criticize people because when you get that criticism back, it's not good. I don't sit here and criticize people for the way they do their podcasts. I know someone who does their podcast entirely AI, but he does sit down and writes the entire script. And then he uses a voice generator, something, something word. And that's who speaks for him. I'm not criticizing it. And I know him personally, but I'm not going to go and say, hey, man, this is AI. This shouldn't be out there. That's not my battle. That's not my war. My podcast is my podcast. My voice is my voice. He just doesn't feel comfortable doing it himself, but he wants to get his stories out there. He wants people to hear his stories. It's a bunch of horror stories, similar to Creep Show, and they're interesting, but it's a voice generated something something word. And I'm not criticizing him for that. I follow a lot of YouTubers. I follow a lot of collectors. One is a man that keeps transforming himself into a woman to promote his stuff. That's all AI. And he has 10,000 followers. One other person that criticized me follows him. Why are you following him? All my posts is my hands with my movies. None of it is generated by AI except the thumbnail for my podcast. And I get criticized and lynched for that. It makes no sense. Your hypocrisy makes no sense when you're criticizing someone for using AI for a thumbnail. When half of my followers and people that I follow, with even pictures of them by the beach, there's an AI label because they used AI to enhance either the background or enhance their faces. And then you meet them in person and you're like, wait, you're not Macaulay Culkin. So, the hypocrisy astounds me because I use it in very small doses because I like creating. And because you didn't listen to my episode, because you didn't listen to my other episodes, you decided to just criticize me and not listen to my podcast altogether. But guess what? I slept okay last night. I always sleep okay. That didn't keep me up awake. So that doesn't keep me up at night. You don't want to listen to my podcast because my thumbnail is created by AI. Okay, but my lessons are not created by AI. My lessons are my lessons. My lessons is my experience. My lessons is my words. My lessons is me talking to other people that are real. I use it for outlines. Sure. I use it for show notes. Great. I use it to come up with a title that can catch somebody's eye. All right. And brainstorming. I talked about using AI for brainstorming, not use AI telling AI, hey, give me a whole season. No, how about you sit down, you write your whole season, and then go to ChatGPT and be like, can you do me a favor? Can you organize these? What topics should come first? Because that's what I do. I write everything I want to talk about small businesses, marketing, movies, editing, preserving, talking to you guys about hosting platforms and recording softwares. All of that is in my little yellow notebook. All of that. Even stuff for this episode, I went to my little note app. I said, I want to talk about community. I want to talk about hosting platforms. I want to talk about the AI usage and recording softwares and how much time you should spend on promoting and stuff like that. And I wanted to say a small farewell for my hiatus for my next few weeks off. I wrote all that on my little note app on my phone. Then I created an outline for it so that way I can see it on my computer. And how did I create my outline? I copy pasted it to ChatGPT because my notes were all over the place. And then ChatGPT just put it in bullet points so I can read it easier. Sometimes my ADHD gets the best of me. So I need to have things outlined. I'm not easy to focus on a task. So AI has helped a little bit through that process. So criticizing someone without knowing that person, it makes you, it makes you worse than you think. It makes you the bad person, not me, because at least I admit in where I use AI. I don't use AI to make myself more beautiful. No, God made me this way, sadly. And this is how I have to live my life with a hunch in my back. I don't use AI for that. I barely post pictures of myself, let alone with AI. So you will get criticisms for everything. You will get criticisms for your first episode sounding terrible. I heard a guru say on one of the episodes that I listened to recently, but I think it's an old episode of his about, oh my God, I listened to that and it was horrible. And, basically, paraphrasing here, basically felt pity. So I went to the podcast, we talked and whatever. You don't have to say that. You don't have to say, "Oh my god, that person's episode was so bad. I just felt bad for him, but you know what? At this point, I committed, or this is what I do. I go to new people's podcasts and I tell them like, do this and do that." Okay, but then you criticize it. Then you're over here criticizing how bad it was. That's not nice. That's not good. Like, it doesn't make you a guru, it makes you, I don't wanna say the word, but, if this was my other podcast, then I would, but it's not. But don't don't be that person that you're saying, "I wanna help people," but then on your podcast, you're criticizing people. It doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense, and if it doesn't make sense to me, why do I gotta keep listening to you? Because then if I wanna, at one point, maybe meet up with you and collab, now, in the back of my head, I'm like, after we collab, is he gonna go and criticize me to this other podcaster he was talking to? Because they just came out of the womb podcasting. They didn't have to learn anything. They knew everything. They are Hall of Famers. They knew everything. They were born with the knowledge of podcasting and editing and thumbnails and transcript and show notes and outlines and all of it. They were born that way. You can't blame them. They were perfect. We're the mere mortals here that don't know how to podcast. So the same criticism you give somebody for AI, the same criticism you give somebody for a horrible episode, do keep in mind things do come back. And sometimes they come back three times worse. And you don't want that criticism on you. I didn't put it out there. I didn't criticize people for the AI in my podcast or anything like that. I criticized it because they criticize people saying, don't use it or overuse it. No, how about you do your own work and stop having AI or Claude or whatever that guy other names is, Alexa, I don't know. Don't have them do the job for you and then sit here and preach how perfect your podcasting workflow is because you don't do it. So now you're giving me advice about podcast workflow when you don't even do your own job. So I don't understand how you're going to be a guru or criticize someone when you yourself are taking advantage of that same situation. Sorry for the rant, but I was actually going to do an episode just on that, but I just didn't want to end that on a sour note. But I do want to let you guys know that I do appreciate the time you guys have spent here with me. And I thought that when I first started podcasting, I was going to be measuring my success on downloads. And I do with this one, at least I felt or I feel that my success is more the community that I built. It's the consistency of getting these episodes out there. which some were like 2, 3 in a week. And because of that motivation to be in your ears every week, I learned new skills and I met other creators. I would not have dared to contact Dave or contact some of the YouTubers that I listened to. But because I started podcasting, I was like, hey, I'm legit and I'm learning, but I do want to be able to work with you later on, even though I'm still learning. But I noticed that even though I'm still learning, and this is probably something it's wrong to say, but I compare my episodes, my 10 silly episodes or my other 5, 6 silly episodes on my physical pot, and they're better than some people that have been podcasting for 10 years. And then I go and they're spread all over the place. They're doing hundreds of episodes a day on YouTube and they barely care about their podcast. And I ask myself, why do you have a podcast then? Because your YouTube channel sounds and looks professional, but then, well, let's throw some scrapped over there so anyone who's on Apple podcast can listen to me as well. I get it being everywhere, but you also wanna be everywhere and sound good and look good. Don't think that just because we're audio over here, that you can sound like you just ran a mile and you're running the mile while you're recording. It's not respectful to us, and I've tried to basically take what I don't like from some of the podcasts that I've been hearing that have been 800, 400, 100 episode in, and what I don't like, take it and make sure that my listeners do get at least some quality. Maybe we don't understand each other too well because, my English and your English are not the same. Maybe you don't have an accent. Maybe you do have an accent. But at the end of the day, it is still a clean recording. It is still a respectful recording. And if you're going to work and listening to me at the same time, I don't want you to be like, wait, I can't hear because of the noise behind. I can't hear because your music is too loud as a background. I want you guys to be able to hear me or at least understand me and be respectful to your listeners. That I learned. Be respectful to your listeners. Improve with every episode. Hopefully this episode, again, hammering on that, comes out good because I'm on Riverside right now. So hopefully it comes out good. And I don't feel like I've disrespected you with this episode. But 10 episode might not be a huge milestone, maybe for many people, but it's enough to feel glad that I started. I'm glad that I started podcasting. I'm glad that I met people that I would never have met. And I'm glad I want to continue. I don't want to stop. This is just the beginning, but I'm glad I want to continue. Yesterday, I was very motivated and very inspired, even though I was exhausted from work and I had no voice. It was 4 o'clock in the morning and I was still on my website editing and putting some silly picture of me on my website that you can't even see me because I cut the wrong way. I felt inspired to keep working on my website because I have neglected it after I did it. It's there. Like I said, I go look at it, I'm like, oh, pretty. And then I just close it up again and I don't edit it. I don't upgrade it or upload anything. So I felt motivated. And that's part of the reason I'm taking the small hiatus. And for those who watch Big Brother, Yatus, if you know, you know. That's an inside joke, and I'm not going to explain it. So go watch Big Brother. And the new season's coming out. This is not brought to you by Big Brother or CBS. I'm just obsessed with that show. But that's why I'm taking this small hiatus to promote this podcast, to create some new collaborations. I actually want to bring people into this podcast. I've been doing guest recordings on my other one, slowly learning. I don't do I even though we're recording with videos, I don't do video yet because I'm probably gonna switch my whole setting into my movie room and maybe I'll try to see if I can get some good lighting. Again, it's an investment and I'm not motivated for that. I'm not motivated to do video because I don't want to invest in video. I don't want to have to pay $20 for 1,000 downloads, not renting. But I feel very motivated to do some new things, and I do hope they pay out. I do hope I can bring you a lot more content as I learn and grow. Also, something I want to let you guys know, for those people that I collab with that live within the US Postal Service, I bought some gifts in Rome because they're horror movie lovers. I went to a horror store in Rome and I bought them some gifts that I'm gonna send to them because I didn't pay them to be on my podcast. They agreed to come to that crazy world of mine and collab with me, and I'm very thankful for that. And that's why I got them a gift, something meaningful, small, a gesture, and I'm gonna mail that to them. And if I meet other podcasters or people that I can bring into my podcast, even if they're outside of the US, but if they live in the US, I'll try to, send them a little gift, thank you note or something meaningful. And that is something you should do as well. If you get yourself a guest, even if it's a friend, even if it's an Instagrammer or YouTuber or whatever, and they come into your podcast and you're out and about and you see like a little souvenir or something, think about them. Be like, hey, this person was on my podcast. Hey, can I have your address? I'm not going to send you flowers or one of those edible arrangements, but I'm going to send you a little thank you for being on my podcast and for supporting me. That is probably more valuable than anything you can say to them or do. They came to your podcast and you're thinking about them while you're in Rome. That's probably more meaningful than any other connections you'll make over there on Twitter, just telling them, like, hey, listen to my podcast. Hitting 110 downloads on my physical media podcast felt so exciting because when I created it, I didn't even think I was going to reach 20 listeners or 20 downloads. And when I saw that number within a month, I was like, wow, okay, one episode is doing better than the other one, but now the other one is getting more traction. And if it gave me such motivation, which is why I want to do the tribute for one of the movies that I love, because I know these people are supporting me. And that is the reason I created that podcast. And I created this podcast because of that podcast. And now this community is supporting me. And I'm thankful. I am really, really thankful. That's probably one of the biggest lessons I've learned since I started, and is to be thankful to other people, thankful about meeting people and getting to know them and getting feedback from them. So, like I said, this is not a goodbye. We are not done with the creator's log. There's still a lot to log into into this podcast. But it's just a small pause so I can reach new audiences. Meanwhile, you can reach me on Instagram, KRPODLAB, that is KRPODLab, as well as krpotlab.com. That's KRPODLAB.com. I will post all the links that I spoke about here, davesrss.com, all those links so you guys can check them out, including the one for my episode. If you have any questions while I'm away, you can go to Instagram, DM me, send me a voice note. I will happily reply. I'm on Instagram 24/7. Trust me. Well, maybe not the 4 hours that I'm sleeping, but I would say 27. I'm there 27. So you can reach me on Instagram at any time. I will gladly reply. I'll send you a voicemail or whatever way you want me to reply. But just because we're not creating episodes for a few days or for a few weeks, it doesn't mean that I am not there for you. So go ahead and follow me over there, and I will see you guys next time. I'm Carlos, and this has been the Creator's Log.